I came home to find my sister's family had moved into my new house without permission. When I demanded they leave, Anna smirked and said, "You're single. You don't need all this space," while her kids destroyed my furniture. I called 911. The rage that flooded through me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I stood in my own doorway, watching complete strangers treat my home like their personal playground, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about 32 years of being treated like my needs, my achievements, and my boundaries meant absolutely nothing to these people. My hands were shaking as I held the phone, waiting for the dispatcher to answer. Anna was still talking, still justifying why she had every right to be here, while Josh nodded along like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. The kids were oblivious to the chaos they had created, but I could see juice stains on my new couch cushions and crayon marks on my freshly painted walls. What struck me most was how entitled they all seemed, not embarrassed, not apologetic, but genuinely confused about why I was upset. Anna kept repeating variations of, "We're family," like it was some magical phrase that erased the concept of personal property and basic human respect. Josh had the audacity to suggest I was being selfish for wanting to live in my own house alone. As I waited for the police to arrive, I found myself analyzing the situation with a clarity I'd never had before. This wasn't an impulsive decision on their part. Mom's visit last week suddenly made perfect sense. She'd been casing the place, noting where I kept my spare key, memorizing the layout. Anna and Josh had planned this invasion, probably with my parents' full support and encouragement. The strategic part of my brain started cataloging everything I was seeing. They hadn't just moved in. They'd made themselves completely at home. There were groceries in my refrigerator that I hadn't bought, toys scattered across every surface, and Anna had actually rearranged my living room furniture to better accommodate their needs. This wasn't desperate people seeking temporary shelter. This was a calculated takeover attempt. But as I stood there documenting their audacity, I realized something important. They had just made the biggest tactical error possible. By physically invading my property, they'd crossed from emotional manipulation into criminal behavior. Everything that had happened before could be dismissed as family drama, but this was trespassing, breaking and entering, and theft of services. They'd handed me all the legal ammunition I could ever need. What my family still didn't understand, even after all these years, was that being quiet and accommodating didn't mean I was weak or incapable. It meant I'd been choosing to prioritize family harmony over my own interests. But that choice had limits, and they'd just blown past every single one of them. The truth was, I'd been preparing for this moment my entire adult life without even realizing it. Every year of working while Anna got handouts, every promotion I'd earned while she relied on others, every dollar I'd saved while she spent money that wasn't hers, all of it had been building toward this confrontation. I just hadn't expected it to happen in my own living room. As a senior systems analyst at Austin Technology Solutions, I'd spent the last 8 years developing expertise that my family had never bothered to understand or appreciate. My job involved identifying vulnerabilities in complex networks, documenting security breaches, and implementing strategic solutions to prevent future attacks. I specialized in forensic analysis, which meant I knew exactly how to preserve evidence, trace digital footprints, and build comprehensive case files. More importantly, my position had given me access to legal resources that most people never knew existed. Our company maintained relationships with law firms specializing in corporate security, intellectual property theft, and criminal fraud. I'd worked directly with attorneys on cases involving employee malfeasance, contract violations, and evidence preservation. These weren't casual acquaintances. These were professional relationships built over years of successful collaboration. My financial situation was something my family had never fully grasped because they'd never bothered to ask. My salary as a senior analyst was $89,000 per year, but with performance bonuses and consulting projects, my actual income last year was $112,000. I owned my previous condo outright, having paid off the mortgage 2 years early, and sold it for $87,000 profit when I bought my new house. My savings account contained $94,000. My retirement fund was worth $156,000, and I had an additional $23,000 in emergency funds. Unlike Anna and Josh, who lived paycheck to paycheck despite constant family bailouts, I had built genuine financial independence. My house purchase hadn't even required a mortgage. I'd paid $165,000 cash for the property, leaving me with substantial reserves for renovations and emergencies. This wasn't luck or circumstance. It was the result of 15 years of disciplined financial planning and career advancement. My professional network gave me access to resources that my family couldn't even imagine. Through my work with corporate security cases, I'd developed relationships with private investigators, forensic accountants, and specialized attorneys. Dr. Rebecca Valdez, the forensic accountant who'd helped us trace embezzled funds in a major corporate case, owed me significant professional favors. Attorney James Mitchell had specifically told me to call him if I ever needed legal assistance after I'd helped his firm recover crucial evidence in a data theft case. Most importantly, I understood documentation and evidence preservation in ways that would make any lawyer proud. Every text message from my family was automatically backed up to 3 separate cloud services. I had screenshots of Anna's social media posts, copies of every email my parents had sent, and detailed notes about every conversation where they'd pressured me about the house purchase. What they saw as forgotten arguments, I saw as a comprehensive record of harassment and intimidation. My technical background had also taught me patterns of behavior that my family displayed perfectly. In corporate security, we called it escalation of commitment, when people who've made bad decisions double down instead of admitting error. Anna and my parents had been escalating for months, each action more unreasonable than the last. The break-in wasn't an aberration. It was the predictable next step in a pattern I'd been watching develop. The police officers who responded were professional and thorough, which didn't surprise me. I'd presented the situation calmly, with specific details and clear evidence of criminal trespass. When they arrived, I had my documentation ready. Photos of the damage, screenshots of the harassing messages, and a clear timeline of events leading up to the invasion. Anna and Josh's explanations to the officers were exactly what I'd expected: entitled, rambling, and completely focused on their needs rather than legal realities. Josh actually told the police that I should be grateful they were willing to take care of such a big house for me. Anna kept insisting that family members can't trespass against each other, which was legally absurd but emotionally revealing. After the police removed them from my property, I immediately began implementing the strategic response I'd been mentally preparing. My first call was to James Mitchell, the attorney who'd told me to contact him if I ever needed help. When I explained what had happened, his response was immediate and professional. "This isn't just trespassing," James said, after reviewing the evidence I'd compiled. "This is criminal conspiracy, harassment, and potentially a pattern of stalking behavior. Your documentation is excellent. We can build a comprehensive case that addresses not just today's incident, but months of escalating harassment." James connected me with Detective Lisa Warren, who specialized in domestic relations crimes and family harassment cases. Detective Warren was particularly interested in my evidence about the systematic nature of my family's behavior. "What you're describing is a classic pattern of financial abuse and emotional manipulation," she explained. "The fact that you've documented everything so thoroughly makes this case unusually strong." My next consultation was with Dr. Valdez, the forensic accountant who'd helped me on corporate cases. I explained the financial dynamics of my family's behavior, the constant bailouts for Anna, the expectation that my resources should be available for their use, and the pattern of economic manipulation I'd observed over the years. "This is economic coercion," Dr. Valdez confirmed. "Your family has been operating under the assumption that your financial independence is somehow illegitimate or temporary. The house invasion was an attempt to reassert control over resources they believe should be communally available. This pattern is actually more common than people realize, especially in families where one member achieves significantly greater financial success." Working with Dr. Valdez, we developed a comprehensive analysis of the financial manipulation I'd experienced over the years. She helped me quantify the economic impact of my family's behavior: the $400 monthly rent I'd paid while Anna got free college support, the gifts and bailouts she'd received that were never offered to me, and the systematic expectation that my success should benefit everyone else. James recommended bringing in Dr. Patricia Hoffman, a psychologist who specialized in family systems and emotional abuse patterns. Dr. Hoffman's evaluation was eye-opening. Your family has created a dynamic where your autonomy is seen as threatening to their established hierarchy, she explained. Anna's position as the favored child depends on you remaining in a subordinate role. Your house purchase represented a challenge to that structure that they felt compelled to disrupt. Through these consultations, I developed a three-pronged strategic approach. First, immediate legal action to establish clear boundaries and consequences for future harassment. Second, a comprehensive documentation project that would create an unassailable record of their behavior patterns. Third, a systematic disengagement process that would protect me from future manipulation attempts. The legal strategy involved multiple components. James filed for a restraining order that would prohibit my family from contacting me or approaching my property. We also initiated criminal charges for trespassing, breaking and entering, and harassment. Most importantly, we prepared a comprehensive civil lawsuit that would seek damages for the emotional distress, property damage, and systematic harassment I'd endured. My documentation project involved organizing 8 months of evidence into a chronological narrative that clearly showed the escalation of my family's behavior. Working with Dr. Valdez, we created financial analyses that quantified the economic impact of their expectations and demands. The resulting file was over 200 pages of evidence, expert analysis, and legal precedent. The disengagement process was perhaps the most complex element. Dr. Hoffman helped me develop strategies for maintaining no contact with family members who would inevitably try to circumvent legal restrictions through third parties. We prepared responses for flying monkeys, established secure communication protocols, and created contingency plans for various escalation scenarios. Within 2 weeks of the break-in, the consequences began manifesting exactly as I'd predicted. The restraining order was granted based on the overwhelming evidence of harassment and intimidation. Anna and Josh were officially prohibited from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my property, violations punishable by immediate arrest. The criminal charges moved forward rapidly due to the clear evidence and witness statements from the responding officers. Anna and Josh were charged with criminal trespass, burglary, and conspiracy. My parents were charged as accessories after the fact, for their role in providing access to my property and encouraging the break-in. More satisfying were the indirect consequences that rippled through their social networks. Anna's social media complaints about the legal actions made her look increasingly unhinged to friends who didn't understand why someone would break into a family member's house. Josh's employer learned about the criminal charges through a routine background check and placed him on unpaid administrative leave pending resolution of the case. My parents faced their own professional embarrassment when their church community learned about the restraining order. Dad's position as a deacon became untenable when other congregation members questioned his judgment and moral authority. Mom's volunteer work with a local charity ended abruptly when board members expressed concerns about her involvement in criminal harassment. The financial impact on Anna and Josh was immediate and severe. Legal fees for defending against criminal charges consumed their limited savings. Josh's suspension from work eliminated their primary income source, forcing them to move in with my parents. The stress of legal proceedings and financial pressure destroyed the family dynamics that had previously enabled their manipulative behavior. 6 months after the break-in, the legal resolution was complete and comprehensive. Anna pleaded guilty to criminal trespass and received 2 years probation with mandatory anger management counseling. Josh received similar terms, plus 200 hours of community service. My parents were sentenced to 1 year probation and ordered to pay $15,000 in restitution for property damage and legal fees. The civil lawsuit resulted in a $45,000 judgment against my family for emotional distress, harassment, and systematic financial manipulation. While I knew they couldn't pay immediately, the judgment would follow them indefinitely and impact their credit, property ownership, and financial options for years to come. Anna and Josh ultimately divorced 18 months after the legal proceedings concluded. The stress of criminal charges, financial problems, and forced counseling revealed fundamental incompatibilities that had been masked by their shared entitlement and dependence on family support. Anna moved across the state to live with relatives who weren't aware of her legal troubles. Josh attempted to rebuild his life by moving to another city and changing careers, but the criminal record and civil judgment limited his options significantly. He eventually found work in manual labor at significantly reduced income and remains financially unstable. My parents' marriage survived but was permanently altered. Dad retired early from his job to avoid continued professional embarrassment, while Mom became increasingly isolated as friends and community members distanced themselves from the family drama. They sold their house to help pay legal fees and now live in a small apartment across town. As for me, the experience transformed my understanding of family, boundaries, and personal power. My career benefited from the strategic thinking and crisis management skills I developed during the conflict. I received a promotion to principal systems analyst, with a salary increase to $98,000, partly based on the leadership qualities I demonstrated during the family crisis. The house that started this entire conflict became a symbol of my independence and strength. I completed the renovations I'd planned, added a security system, and created the peaceful home environment I'd always wanted. Friends and colleagues who supported me through the crisis became a chosen family that respected my boundaries and celebrated my success. Most importantly, I learned that being accommodating and family-oriented doesn't require accepting abuse, manipulation, or violation of basic boundaries. The strategic approach that dismantled my family's manipulative system became a framework I've used in professional and personal situations ever since.